because it doesn't start with us, it didn't start with me. It didn't start with my father. It didn't start with my grandparents. It's just generational trauma that has been passed on, but and once you know that not you or your father, it's just things happen like that, you're able to detach yourself from it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of FamLife. Today, I got a special guest, my friend, Efrain Reyes, who's the founder of Latino Dad Connection. And I met this man not too long ago, and it's something special when you cross paths with someone with a similar mission. Something very exciting about that, and that's how I felt when I first met you, Efrain. So go ahead and say hey to our listeners and introduce yourself, man.
Yeah, brother. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. Just, giving me the space to share my story. Like you mentioned, my name is Efrain Reyes. I live here in Southern California with my wife. We've been married for 9 years now, together for about 13. And I have 2 beautiful daughters. One is 5 and one is 3. And yeah, I'm the founder of Latino Dad Connection, which our mission is to really inspire and support Latino fathers to be the best that they can be. The reason why I decided to start this was because when I became a father, I was looking for that support, that help, because unfortunately, I didn't have the best father figure growing up, and I really wanted to do the best for my kids. So I was able to find some resources, but I didn't see as much, geared towards the community of like Latinos and, Spanish speaking immigrant community and all the things that we have to struggle with, that maybe other populations, is a little bit different. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to share my story. And, like when I saw your page on Instagram, very similar mission, we're both fathers of color. We're both, trying to work with men, trying to inspire men. So really excited just to be sharing space with you today.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you being here. A lot of good stuff in the intro already that I can't wait to dive into a little bit more. Usually how I start off this podcast is asking the guest, what is your moral code? What are the virtues or values that you most highly regard or, embody as you move through the world, as your father, as you're a husband? What are those things for you?
Yeah, moral code, Dan, that's something really interesting. Something that I really live by, I think is, and something that I say in all my groups is that we are all teachers and we are all students here. Like, just how my daughter can teach me something, I can teach her something, but I'm also learning from her, right? Here together, I'm learning with you, and having these relationships to learn together, is really, really important. So, yeah, this is something that I kind of live by. Another thing is family. Like in the Latino culture, familia is very important, and knowing like where you're coming from and really building that village. Both of my parents came from a large family. So my mom has, they came from a family of 10. My dad too, family of 10. So I have like lots of tios and tias around, and it was really beautiful growing up, having so many people that supported you. And, now it's like, how am I going to take that legacy into my own family? What are the teachings that I'm learning from them and not passing on to my children? Another big one for me that I'm practicing more and more is self-honesty. Just being honest with yourself. Like yesterday, I had another interview with someone, and it's like he was saying that what most matters is like when you do behind closed doors, right? Because everybody can do something, in front of the camera or whatever. But what most matters is inside the doors. What are you doing? And really getting to know yourself and being honest. And that's something that can be difficult, to be honest, and it's something that I'm working working more and more towards. But those are a few of my values that I'm currently, living through at the moment.
I love that, man. I absolutely love that. Yeah, something struck me when you were talking about honesty and behind closed doors. One of mine is honor. And how I really define that is doing the right thing, to the best of my abilities, even when no one's looking, right? So that honesty, there's something really unique and specific that it's not just when it's, out in the open in front of people, but also, when no one else can see, when it's just you and your daughters, right, in the morning or whatever, like even in that time, being honest, being honorable. I really love that. I also love that aspect of we're all teachers and we're all students, right? It takes humility, which I feel like is a big one, especially if you grew up in like a Catholic, Christian.
Catholic, yeah.
It's huge, this humility, but I think what gets left out is kind of the other end, which is like audacity, right? Or that self-trust and confidence to also be the teacher. And I know for myself, when I get in relationship especially with other men, where there's this comfort in switching back and forth between teacher and student, I feel like it's really the most dynamic and fruitful relationships that I have.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, man. Perfect, man. So I want to go back to the introduction, right? And I want to talk a little bit about Latino Dad Connection and, really starting at the inception of it. What made you want to start this offering, this program, this culture for Latino fathers? I know you spoke a little bit about it, in the sense of support, but would love for you to go a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, definitely. So I recently graduated with a master's degree in 2020 when, just as the beginning of the pandemic. So my master's degree was in human and family development. So really studying like the importance of family dynamics, marriage, parenting and all that. And that's the field that I'm in. So I currently teach parenting classes. And, mostly we do a lot of the Latino community and like other communities as well. But what I've noticed is that, once I was doing my classes, mostly women would come and, we're doing evening classes. So I know sometimes for dads that can be difficult because they're at work, but we're doing classes at 6 in the evening. And I started asking myself, like, why is it that not a lot of men or not a lot of dads come, right? And then I became a father, and I got into like, I want to be the best father I can be. So I wanted to get some resources. I actually went through a fatherhood program myself here in Anaheim. So it was called Dads Matter, and it was a 17-week program where we talked about different topics. It was almost like, it was pretty long, to be honest. And there was all kinds of fathers there, grandparents, and a lot of some of them were like court mandated that they had to show up because of court or whatever. But I just got to learn so much from dads, and I learned so much from the program that after I was done with the program, I ended up giving my resume to the director, and I wanted to work in that, and he ended up hiring me. So I worked with Dads Matter for about a year, and I really learned more about how to basically promote to dads, because it's a little bit different than moms. There's other responsibilities that dads may have, that, other struggles that dads may have that maybe is not as relevant for moms, right? So after that, I didn't see so much. I saw Dads Matter, which was open to everybody. And, Latino Dad Connection is open to any dad, right? But it is focused more on the Latino experience, because I am Latino. I was actually born in Mexico, immigrated here at a young age. And there's just struggles that, as Latinos, we have to go through. There's also language, right? So I can facilitate groups in Spanish. A lot of them are Spanglish, because we're first generation, we're second generation, and we're talking lingo or Spanglish that we can understand. And and basically this Latino Dad Connection is a way for us, for Latino fathers, to work on ourselves, dismantle toxic masculinity, redefine what a macho is, and really break those generational patterns that some of us are carrying, that might not be serving us as much. So that's a little bit more about how Latino Dad Connection came about.
That's incredible, man. So how old is your oldest daughter, just to get time frame here?
Yeah, so my oldest daughter is 5. So she's 5, and I was working with parents during that time. And then when I started the fatherhood program, she was about 6 months when I started that. And then I worked from there for like about a year. I decided to go back to school and get my master's degree. After my master's degree, that's when I started my coaching business, basically.
Incredible. Yeah, I really love that your focus on Latino fathers. And like you said, everybody is allowed in, everybody's invited, but the language we're going to speak and what the context we're going to give it in is for Latino fathers. And I think that's really essential. What I see in the men's work and personal development space is it's like very Eurocentric, very like whitewashed in a way, and not necessarily that's a bad thing, but a big part of saying yes to working on yourself is relating to the person who's promoting it, or who's teaching, or who's really advocating for it, right? Because it's like, if you can't relate to that person, it's hard to be like, well, that stuff's for me too. And I think another really big aspect culturally is, masculinity, right? This is a concept, right? So it's a concept that's very culturally driven. So the idea of masculinity here in the United States is different than in Mexico, which is different than in Africa, which is different than in Europe. Maybe there's some similarities or things that cross over, but we all culturally have a different way that we express and hold what masculinity is. So I would love for you to speak a little bit more, of the machismo and just kind of the masculinity in Latino culture.
Yeah, definitely. So machismo, a lot of, I'm going to talk more about the Mexican culture because that's the one that I know most. But, a lot of the Latin American countries are very similar, where a lot of families grew up in rural areas where there was farming, right? I think Mexico is a little bit behind in terms of like technology and stuff like that. So a lot of like my parents grew up with what we call el rancho, where chickens and goats and stuff like that, with large families. So men would have to go and work the fields, which is very hard labor. Yeah, right. Women were more in the home, taking care of the kids, doing all the housework. And these roles of man and woman were very defined. Men knew what to do, women knew what to do, right? And really, I think what happened was there was a power, struggle with patriarchy, thinking that a man is, better than women and things like that, and started kind of taking that into the home. And this machismo, or inflated masculinity, came about in the Latin culture, right? It can really be hurtful for the whole family, right? If I always talk about like that foundation of the family is the marriage between the man and the woman, and if that is not balanced, then everything kind of trickles into the other relationships of the kids, extended family, and things like that. So we grew up with thinking that as a man, there's a certain way that you do things, and you shouldn't be doing housework because that's not a manly thing to do. You shouldn't show emotions, because that's not a manly thing to do. You shouldn't, like the big one is emotions. I think that's the big one in the gender roles. But, we know that now it's a little bit different. We're not living in those types of environments anymore. Now it's like both men and women have to work, especially here in Southern California. It's very expensive to live. And we have to support each other. The gender roles are not as clear anymore, which is fine, And I think coming from that and seeing that growing up, it can be hard to do something different, and especially if you don't see that anybody else in your community is doing it, So what I wanted to do is be that person that is willing to do it. Hey, this is a better way for our families to grow up and be safe and create better relationships, because has been a lot of things in the past that has not been as successful. And then we can talk about trauma, generational trauma and colonization, how that has affected the Mexican culture. And then, immigration too. There has been a lot of families that have been split because of immigration. It can be because they, I've heard a lot of stories where dad, they have a family in Mexico, and dad comes over to the U.S. to, provide for them, bring a better life. But now they're missing the father over there, right? So they don't have a father figure growing up, and the kids grow up and, they get into gangs, they get into, like drug dealers and stuff like that. So that's why Narcos is so big. I believe that's why Narcos is so big in Mexico, because there's so many fathers missing, in the culture. And then when the dad comes over, sometimes he's loyal to the family, or sometimes he finds another family, for whatever reason, and now that family is struggling, right? Or, family here, they immigrated, and for whatever reason, maybe the one of the parents gets deported, right? So they get deported to their home country, and now that family is split up. And how does that affect that family? So there's a lot of things, I think, in the culture, that like you mentioned, some of the men that are doing this type of work are not talking about, because it doesn't really maybe affect them, or maybe they haven't gone through those struggles, right? So those are the things I want to talk about. I want to bring to light those struggles that as Latinos we go through.
Absolutely. I think the giving a voice to it and a space for that to happen, it's really helpful in the sense like, wow, it's not just me, right? It's not just me that feels that way. My father is Colombian. I know I shared that with you before, and it was really interesting growing up. Now looking back, I mean, of course, then it was kind of normal just because it's all I knew. But he was not, and I love my father, great man, but he was not very emotionally available, right? He worked super hard all day long, came home, dinner was always ready for him. Right. I don't think I've ever seen him wash dishes or anything like that. And,
my dad either. I don't think
it's crazy, man. And that's just how I grew up, and I never thought about it. And I'm not saying that was a bad thing, right? But maybe my parents had a talk about what the roles are going to be. I don't think they did, but nonetheless, that's what I saw growing up, and it's very interesting because now it's definitely not like that in my home. And I don't think there is anything wrong with that setup as far as man working all day and then wife stays home with the kids, as long as it's agreed upon and talked about and communicated. And I think that's the big thing now when it comes to gender roles. It's really partner roles, our roles, and how are we going to manage this business of a family, right? And through that communication, being able to find something that works for everyone. But it's really interesting, indoctrination, or just how much I've been affected by that, because even though I am happy to be with the kids, to cook dinner, to clean, I definitely find sometimes in my head where I'm like home after a long day of work, and then I'm cleaning dishes, and I'm like, what the hell? I feel like I'm doing everything around here. You know, this like kind of this weird voice. It's like
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even me, but it is me. But I'm
Yeah.
like, why?
Yeah.
You know, almost like this resentful, kind of like, oh, it would be better if it was that way. And it's like I don't really feel that way, but it still comes up because that's what that's what I saw.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, for sure. And like you mentioned, I think there's nothing wrong with it, right? If that works for your family, great. But what happens is it is not working for a lot of families, right? And fathers feel that, or men feel like they have to have control of things and not, not wash or dishes or whatever, It's just, whatever works for your family. But yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, man. So I want to go back a little bit to the common struggles that fathers face. You were talking a little bit how you were really noticing that the difficulties or struggles for mothers is different than fathers. And
Yeah.
it seemed like, you were really feeling, which I really feel this way, that the struggles that fathers are going through aren't really addressed enough. Not in the sense that the whole, all of society needs to focus on poor dad, but dads need to be vocal and rally around their common struggles so we can support each other. So I'm curious for you in your work, what are the common struggles that you come across?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So my work is really focused, I call it like the 6 pillars of fatherhood. And one of them is physical and mental health. So, in the Latino community, there's a lot of disease of, diabetes and other things because of our diet and things like that. But also because men have a hard time going to the doctor, we like George Lopez would say, I don't go to the doctor because they're going to find something wrong with me, and it's true, right? Like we have this fear of going to the doctor because we feel like, they're going to tell us there's something wrong with us, and the mental health aspect, right? Like, why am I going to go to the therapist? Porque estoy loco, no estoy loco, like the whole mental health stigma. So that's one, right, with men. The other one is healthy sex life. So, as men, we have a lot of us have a high sex energy that we were not taught how to manage or guide in, from an early age, from when we were teenagers. And personally, that has gotten me into a lot of trouble, whether it be cheating, whether it be pornography, whether it be, other stuff like that. And didn't really have a guide for someone to help me through this, And that's a struggle that, I feel like women don't have to deal as much. So that's another focus that I want to talk about within my work. Another one is the aspect of money. How do we manage money? How do we make money, right? And financial education and stuff like that. Because as men, we have an instinct to provide for our families and protect our families.
Yes,
So that has to do with the financial aspect, right? How are you spending your money? Are you investing it? Are you creating assets? All that. Another aspect of Latino Dad Connection is that father-son bond, father-daughter bond, father-children bond. Because if, for example, for me, I didn't grow up with my father being too involved in my life, right? He was there, but he didn't know how to be there emotionally and, just guide me through things. And we know from research how much that plays a part into the child's development, right? When the father is involved, children are able to, they're more likely to go to college, they're more likely to get better grades, they're less likely to attend or go into the criminal system, less likely to have sex at an early age or unsafe sex at an early age. So there's so many benefits from the father being there, right? But if you didn't have that role model growing up, then how do you know how to create that? And for me, I'll talk for myself. it has been difficult sometimes, creating that bond. So I had to be very intentional of being present with my children. And then lastly is, I think I talked about it earlier, is the relationship that you have with your significant other, or if you are not together, that co-parenting relationship, right? Because you're still going to have to deal with mom in one way or another. So how can you, as a dad or as a man, take ownership of that relationship and have a healthy or even just cordial relationship, so your children can have a better environment where they can grow up. So those are some of the core pillars of like what I like to bring to men, and just to talk about and see where they're at in those areas.
Those are really, really good. I think they encompass a lot of the problems that I've seen, or heard from fathers that I've talked to. Out of all of those, which would you say has been the most difficult one for you, or the one maybe not most difficult, but the one you've had to work at the most?
The one that I would have to work at the most, I would say, there's probably two. There is relationships. Just was not taught how to have a healthy relationships. It's something that I'm learning as I go. With my wife, trying different things. I just bought like a couples journal, something that like I've never heard like any of my tios or anyone kind of do something similar to this, right? So this is something new that is for me and for my wife, and this is something that we're trying out, where we're writing to each other and expressing each other's feelings and things like that. So that's been a big one. That's actually why I probably came into this work. I'll give you a quick story where right before I had my daughter, maybe like about 7 years ago, I was in a very toxic environment, in a bad place. I was drinking a lot, I was actually cheating on my wife at that time, and my wife ended up, catching me. And it was this big moment where she just had it, and we were about to get a divorce. She left the apartment for 2 weeks, and I just had those 2 weeks. I just had to like contemplate and like think about, what did I do, my decisions, how do I want to move forward? Do I want to continue with my wife, or do I want to end it and do my thing and things like that? And she didn't want to talk to me at all. After those 2 weeks, we ended up meeting at a park, and she had a whole list of things that she wanted. Like, yeah, you want another chance? All right, well, here's a list of things that you have to do. And it was this huge list, and one of them was like, you got to change your phone number. You got to change your career, go into the different job. At that time, I actually owned a party bus, and I was more into like the party scene, I guess. So he's like, you got to sell your business. You have to change your social media. All these things, one of them was also too, like, we had to go to couples therapy. And I was like, oh man. So that was like the turning point for me, right? Because before that, I was just going through the motions, basically. Obviously I thought about it, and then I ended up like, saying, yeah, let's do it. At first, I didn't think about it too much, but then the work had to be done, and I struggled, because that's all I knew. But I also knew that I wanted to save my marriage. So I had to do, had to go through some of those steps that I mentioned. And I think if it wasn't for that, for my wife, like setting that boundary with me, I would probably, not be even here, not talking to you, because that was like the turning point of like, shit, I'm really fucking up right now, So that has been a struggle for me, the relationship aspect. I feel like I'm a better place right now. Definitely not, perfect, but I'm still working on it. So that's a big one. And the other one that I want to mention is the money, the aspect of money, and being an entrepreneur and trying to create money, right? Even like when I create my programs, sometimes I have this feeling about like, man, like, should I even charge for this? Like, especially this type of work, like a lot of men might need or benefit from it, but they may not be financially stable. And at the same time, I'm like, no, you know what? Like, this is something that I have gained throughout my experience. This is value that I'm adding to men. So it is valuable, right? So it's just like this limiting belief about, I don't deserve money, or I don't deserve to be well off. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I didn't see that growing up. My parents always worked laborers jobs, such as, they were never like the boss per se. My mom worked cleaning homes. My dad worked in construction. So I didn't see that model of like, hey, money is a tool for you to live well, and it's okay to be an entrepreneur. It's okay to be a businessman. It's okay to bring money into the home. It's okay to charge people for your service and value your work. So that's another one that I'm like kind of working towards. It's been a work in progress, but I think those are the two like that have been the hardest for me.
That's a huge one. I definitely want to jump into finances a little bit more, but first just want to go back to relationship. One, that was an incredible story. And I think I'm just thinking about those 2 weeks, right? Where it's almost like, dark night of the soul, where you just have to really sit and be with yourself and really ask yourself that question, what do I really want? Right. Mm-hmm. Which for me has been the hardest question ever. And it's a question that I have to ask myself over and over again. But, really at that point in that isolation, it's like, what do I really want? And you chose your relationship, which I think is incredible, and did the things to rebuild that. In myself working with fathers, I definitely find that a lot of guys find the relationship with their children to be a bit more natural, especially after like a year. Right. The first year is a little tough because it's like they only mom. Mm-hmm. So that's a little tough. But especially after that, a lot of guys find it a little bit more natural, for younger children. Obviously, it gets more complicated as they get smarter and more clever, and all those things have different things going on in their lives. But I feel like relationship is one that a lot of guys aren't expecting. When we find out our partner is pregnant, we focus so much on finances and how we're going to be a good dad. We don't realize that relationship now becomes a separate entity, in the sense that there's the relationship with myself, there's our family dynamic, with the kids, and then there's the relationship with my partner, with my wife, or, your partner. So if we don't switch up our focus, right, and really make time that's uniquely for our romantic relationship, it just starts to dwindle. And our wives get really upset and start to whisper their complaints and dissatisfaction with it. So I feel like a lot of fathers are not prepared for that, or they don't even see it and get blindsided by it. Mm-hmm. And then you got that on top of not sleeping much and like all these new things that are going on that you have to do as far as taking care of a child. So relationship is a really big one for a lot of dads out there. So, any dad that's listening, focus on your relationship. Don't neglect it, and don't take it for granted. I found that was like the big help for me.
Yeah, no, and you say something very important, because before you have a child, it's just the relationship, like you said, with yourself and with your partner. But now you're bringing another human being into it, and then it's like this intermingle of relationships. And like you said, in the first year, the child is very attached to the mom, especially if they're breastfeeding, right? A lot of bonding going on right there. And for me, and like you mentioned, I think for a lot of dads, it's hard to create that bond. For me, they say like, you got to talk to them when they're in their belly and read to them and sing to them. That for me was hard. Like, it felt unnatural to do, because I'm like, I don't know about this, But I got myself to do it, especially because, like I mentioned, I didn't see that with other dads. So I'm like, I'm learning this stuff. I went to school for this. So it's like, I got to set that example too, but it just didn't come as natural to me. And after that first year, it does get easier. They start walking, you can start playing more rough with them. And then another thing that I learned from that Dads Matter program is that there's thing called maternal gatekeeping. I'm not sure if you heard of it.
No.
No. So maternal gatekeeping is basically the idea that mothers they keep the gate open or closed for the father. And it can be something very subtle as like, for example, let's say you're changing diapers and you're like, oh, you're not doing it right. Let me do it. So it's like kind of protecting the child, but it also is not allowing the dad to be involved in the child's life. So it can be that, or like, let's say the way that we parent, we like to like, I saw your picture, right? You throw your kid up in the air, yeah? A mom probably would not do that, right? And moms get like, estás loco, what are you doing? That is considered, it's a type of maternal gatekeeping because, you're not allowing the father to just be the father and be involved, right? And these struggles, can start very little, and especially if you are if you're not together with that partner, right? There's a lot of maternal gatekeeping there, because I want to raise my child to be a certain way. Maybe the dad, it's different the way the dad parents, and maybe the mom doesn't understand that, and it's like, don't do this, don't do that. It might be, it might not be the wrong thing, but it's just different from what the mother. So, kids need both, right? Father and mother, and they bring different things to the child. But yeah, that's something that I've learned too as I.
That's a really, really good concept there. And just, for me, having the name for it, maternal gatekeeping, I think that comes up a lot. I'm really curious if there's ways that you found to practically navigate that, especially in working with other dads, because I've definitely heard that from a lot of dads, whether it is changing the diapers or how you dress them or where you want to take them by yourself, right? Just a lot of that. So, practical ways of navigating that.
Yeah, I think, like you said, putting a name to it, right, kind of helps to like understand what's going on. And understand that the mom is not intentionally keeping you away from the child. What she wants is mostly just to protect the child, and they have a very strong bond. They have a lot of a maternal instinct to help that. So being patient with that, but also educating mothers about it, right? Because I feel like a lot of mothers don't know about what they're doing, right? And how they can be doing better. So one thing that I share with mothers is like, when a dad is trying to be involved, he's changing the diapers, even if he does it wrong, just praise him. Like, hey, honey, thank you for changing the diapers. Thank you for helping me out with the kids. Thank you for doing this. Praise is very important. And then showing them, next time, make sure you do this, because explaining, right, kind of teaching the dad about child care and things like that, because some of us are clueless, like myself. So it's really having the mom guide us through that child upbringing, basically.
Yeah, I really like that. I think I really like the aspect that you're saying she's not intentionally trying to hurt us or say that she doesn't trust us. I think it's this hard wiring of like this mama bear energy, to keep her the child and herself safe. Not so much that she thinks you're a danger, but it's like, how can she know she can trust you? Really, that's really what's under all of it. And so I found for myself, I would get defensive in a way, which is never really the answer. Because for me, I would. If she was questioning how I was doing something, I took it as like I'm incapable or I'm dumb. My own trauma stories. So that never works, right? Being defensive never gets to the answer. And I think what helped me is, one, the reassurance of like, honey, I got this. And she might not just be like, oh, okay, you got it, you're good. It might be a little more like, oh, are you sure? Or she might sigh and leave the room. But that verbal reassurance of I got this, not necessarily in like, get out of here, but more in the, that confidence or assertive. Yeah, trust me. That's one. Bringing some humor and lightness into it, because in general, anytime you laugh, you kind of let go of that tension. So, maybe I would like hold the baby upside down and like, do I change her like this, or, do something stupid like that, which I found that was really helpful too. And then this is like a little bit bigger, but also helpful. We had a conversation about family core values, right? So what are some of our values as a family? Mm-hmm. So in being able to agree upon those values of being, adventurous, prayerful, fun, and having like ritual, dinner every night, those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. In coming back to that, we were able to have this conversation that we can want and be working towards the same thing, and our paths to get there might be different. Right. So maybe for me, adventurous might be like if my son wants to go outside in the snow with his shorts on, like, you know what, he's going to be okay. I'll let him go. And maybe adventurous for her is like we take a vacation every year, right? So either way, it's like I can't make her wrong for that, and she can't make me wrong for it, because we both actually want the same thing. It just looks a little bit different for us.
Yeah. I love that, man. And I think you hit a big point where you said like getting over that defensiveness, right? Because it's our instinct immediately, right? Like, what, you think I'm dumb? I'm not capable of doing this, whatever. So I think if you're able to get over that hump, whether it be through humor, whether it be through like communication, hey honey, trust me, I got this, if not, and also being able to take feedback, like, show me how to do it, like, it's cool. We're learning, we're new parents, we're not going to get this 100%. So, and also just, the family core values, man, that's huge, man. That's something I think I need to like sit down and do.
I'm sure you guys will find in the conversation, since you've been together for 9 years, a lot of similarities there. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think, but nonetheless, it's a really good one to have, and we're due for it again. I think we had the conversation when my son was like firstborn. And that was, over 3 years ago now. So it's time for us to revisit it. Perfect. So I want to go all the way back to finances. Now, I love seeing young fathers like yourself who are pursuing their mission and, really doing this entrepreneurial thing with young kids and a family. It's something I'm doing as well. And it's hard as hell, man. It is really, really difficult for me. So, I just want to talk about that a little bit. How do you balance being a man with a mission of helping other fathers, tending to your relationship, taking care of your young children, making sure you guys are financially stable? How do you navigate all that?
Yeah, man, it's been a difficult journey. Like you mentioned, being an entrepreneur and trying to provide for my family. First of all, I think it's important to have that communication with your wife and share that vision that you have, right? Like, this is the vision that I have. This is why I'm doing this. I'm doing it for myself, but I'm also doing it for the family. So I am going to have to sacrifice certain things, right? I'm going to have to sacrifice family time. I'm going to have to sacrifice money. I'm going to have to sacrifice, time that we would have together, maybe vacations. Like, there's a lot of things that as entrepreneurs, we've sacrificed because we have a bigger vision and we know where we're going and we know what we can provide to the world. But I think if you don't talk to your partner about it, and they don't understand why you're doing certain things, they're going to think that you're just, kind of don't want to spend time with them. You'd rather, do something else. And a lot of times as fathers, we are doing this because of our family, right? Because we want to provide for them. So being really clear about that, I think is really important. And also, because family is important, having those times of quality time. I have a full-time job. I'm doing this business. I have 2 daughters. So one of the things that I've learned is quality time is really important. Not necessarily quantity, because I don't have a lot of time. But when I am with my family, I'm fully present, you know, something that I'm still working on, fully present with them, connecting with them, asking them questions with my wife. Hey, you know, what was the most interesting part of your day? Tell me if there's anything I can help you with. How can I support, you know? So just being very intentional with the time that you do have together. Right. So that's been huge for me, in terms of like making sure that I do have a balance with that. Another thing that we were talking about before we got on here is waking up early. You know, waking up early is huge. Like as a father, especially if you're trying to build a business, you got to wake up before the kids wake up. You know? Once the kids wake up, it's a whole different story, you know, and like setting your day straight through whatever routine that you may have, you know, if it's going to the gym, meditation, whatever, setting your intentions for that day, setting your to-do list for that day and see what you're gonna accomplish. So that's been another huge one for me. And you know, I can really tell when my life is not going so well, depending on my morning routine. Like if I'm slacking off, you know, other parts of my life don't seem to be in place, right? So it's really like how you start your day is really huge. So those are a few things, I think.
Yeah, those are really, really good ones. Yeah, with that morning routine, it's like it goes back to the physical and mental health. It's like if you don't take care of that, how can you take care of everything else, right? That's the foundation of everything. You know, and then this David Data, The Way of the Superior Man, he talks about a man's mission being more important than anything, including his family and his children. And I always had a really tough time with that one. Not because I thought he was wrong, but there's a balance, right? Because obviously, if you always put your mission before your family and children, you're going to lose them in a way. However, our mission, especially when it's tied to service and actually making the world a better place, you know, it's going to require some sacrifices. And I've been guilty of this, and I know other dads who are entrepreneurs are guilty of this as well at times, is I work really hard, you know, the full-time job, the passion project / mission, and there's like this saying, give the world my best and come home and give my family the rest, right? So it's just get like so, I guess I don't want to use the word burnt out, but it's just like you're using so much energy that by the time you come home, it's becomes really difficult to give that actual quality time with your family, presence, the best of you. And so I've definitely found for myself, it's not so much about quantity, even though quantity is really nice, but it's just not a luxury that I have. But that quality is super important. So really making a huge effort that when I walk in the door, when I come out of the home office, that I'm going to give my family just as much as I give a client or give a group that I'm running or a podcast interview. That same level of enthusiasm, care, focus, all that is going to go to them as well. Yeah,
no, I completely agree. And that quote that you mentioned, man's mission, I think you said a man's mission is bigger than its family. And what was the other one? Like it's
family is, wife and children.
Yeah, I do believe that, I do believe that because our children, being a father is a big part of who I am, but children are temporary. They're gonna grow up and they're gonna do their own thing, right? They're gonna leave. But your purpose is going to be with you forever, your mission, and what the legacy that you want to create for yourself. Now, like you mentioned, we do have to create that balance. It's not that we're going to put our business first or our passion first. It really goes hand in hand, and really being intentional with both. Again, communication, right? Communication is huge. For me, like letting my wife know, like, hey, this is what my schedule is going to look like, because my schedule is all over the place. I have things going on all the time. It's like, this is what my schedule is going to look like for this week. Like, where can I support you? How can you support me? We're in this mission together. And how can we move forward with that as well?
Yeah, the schedule. If there's one thing that we'll go to couples counseling for, it's my schedule. Because traditionally I've been really, really bad at keeping like a tight, sharp, up-to-date schedule. But now, it's so dependent upon, with both of us working in that, like it's got to be good. And oh my God, so many times, it's not in the schedule. Are you kidding me? So it's a huge one. That's a big part of communication and making it all work. So I just had to laugh to myself when you schedule over there.
That's hilarious.
Awesome, man. Well, there's one other thing I want to talk about, and it came up earlier, and this is something that I've seen happen a lot. Our relationships with our father affecting how we father. So, I feel like there's so many men, especially in like Latino Black communities, who didn't have a father figure very present, right? And there's this aspect of, maybe it's doubt of not being able to be a good father, right? I didn't have the blueprint. I didn't know what to do. Or, my father was this way and I absolutely do not want to be like that, whatever it may be. How do you work through that with men?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because, I'm working through that myself at the moment. Just a little background about, like I mentioned, my father was not very present. But one of the things, it was because he had a problem with alcohol and he was an alcoholic growing up. So, that affected his mental, physical capability of just being there. And then growing up, like when I became a dad, I didn't know how to, like you mentioned, I didn't have that blueprint of how to be a good father. So that's why I decided to seek resources and stuff. Recently, I have just kind of explored more my relationship with my father because I feel like a lot of things too, what happened was I created a picture or an idea of what my father, who he was, through my mom's lenses, because she would share so much of the things that he would do or not do and stuff like that. And it was just creating this idea of like, oh, this is my father, blah, 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 And then thankfully he's still alive and I'm still working on the relationship with him. I wanted to know more, like, okay, who is this person? Who is this guy? Why is he like that? So I actually wrote him a letter last year, and that was like a forgiveness letter. And in that letter, I told him, it was titled, man, I'm going to get emotional, but I told him, I forgive you for what you didn't do. And it was more of like, not that he did something, like he was not violent towards us. He'd hit us with the belt like a couple of times, but it was no big deal. But it just, he was not present, and there's a father wound that I was trying to fill there. So I needed to write that letter for him and I gave it to him. We actually went to eat tacos, and just like, I wanted to hear more about his story. And like, I want to know, like, how was it for you growing up? Because he was not like very expressive of like talking to about his childhood and how his father was with him. And, we're talking about generational trauma. And I wanted to know more about that. And, he talked to me about it. He mentioned that he basically grew up in the streets. Both parents would work. His dad also had an alcoholic problem. Would have to get into fights, prove that he was a man. Would have to steal to eat, just to eat for the day. And basically grew up like that, experimented with many drugs growing up, something that he never talked to me about. I thought it was just alcohol, but it was, other things that I didn't know about. And then, that relationship that was with how he had that relationship with his dad, that he mentioned that really when they would hang out was when they were drinking. That was the only time, like, they would go to a bar or something and hang out there, and that was the only time that, like, they would spend together. So I think one very important thing, as we address this father wound, is learning more about our history, right? Because it doesn't start with us, it didn't start with me. It didn't start with my father. It didn't start with my grandparents. It's just generational trauma that has been passed on, but and once you know that, it's not you or your father, it's just, things happen like that. You're able to detach yourself from it, right? And stop playing that blame game, like, oh, it's because of you that I'm like this. And no, it is what it is. This is what happened. So knowing your history, but then, okay, let's heal from that, go through your process, do what you need to do. If you need to write a letter to someone, if you need to connect with someone, if you need to learn more about, I had to call my aunt to, like, tell me more about my grandparent, like, because my dad couldn't tell me what, how he grew up. So I'm like, okay, I need to call my aunt, learn more about his childhood, what he went through. So it was just like this discovery process. And as I learned more about my grandfather and my great grandfather, I learned more about myself, right? And, like, why I'm the way that I am. And now how can I move forward with that? So in learning about your ancestry or your ancestors, it's not just the negative things, because there was so much positive. There's so much resilience that they have, so many great qualities. So it's not just, like, trauma. It's also qualities, like, hey, my grandfather was a chingon. He worked a lot and he cared about his family. I'm talking about my my mom's side of the family, but yeah. It was just more about learning about where this is coming from and getting to know myself better.
Incredible, man. I can only imagine writing that letter and then the moment that you give it to your father.
Oh man, yeah, it was.
And dive into that conversation, and you said the word blame came up, and I think I'm guilty of this. I know a lot of men are in that space of, blaming our fathers for all of our shortcomings, right? Or blaming them for all the things that they didn't give us, or blaming them for ways that they were. And that works to a certain point, but we don't really get to learn about them as a man if we're just in this place of blame. And it really, for me, it's been the road from blame to compassion, right? Being able to see my father as another man who had a fucking hard life, or who just had things to deal with that are not easy, right? Yeah. Being able to see him from that light, that compassion, not like it just makes everything go away by any means, but you're able to understand. And like you're saying, it kind of allows the connection to the generations, to the ancestry, to the lineage, right? We have to be in the place of compassion in order to really connect to that, which allows for us to take action to really bring that holistic healing.
Definitely, man. You said it best. With that word, compassion is huge. And I do believe that a lot of us that carry a father wound go through that blame stage, right? Blaming or even a mother wound, like blaming our parents for certain things. But I do believe that that's part of the process. Usually people go through that, and then they get to the other side where they see the parents as more like you said, like a compassion, where like, hey, it's not their fault. They did their best with what they had at the time that they had, the resources that they had. It just happened, But now we're here. We're in a different time. We have so many more resources, so many more connections, Now we can do better, right? So it's just like, it does bring back some compassion for our parents, for our grandparents, and everything that they had to go through.
I absolutely love that, man. I think the courage that it took to actually want to work on that relationship is really commendable, man. I know there's going to be some man out there listening to this that's like, wow, if he did it, I could do it. I could start the process. So I really appreciate you sharing that story.
Yeah, and just the way it came about, and to talk about the work that we're doing, it came about from a men's group, right? Talking to other men about, you know, our father relationship and how was it for us growing up. And it was not even in my awareness that, you know, I had a father wound, or that I had to do something like this to heal myself. But while talking to other men in the group, you know, I realized that, hey, you know, like I can probably work more on my relationship with my dad. And although he's not doing anything to work on that relationship, it doesn't hold me back for me to do it, you know, because essentially I'm doing it for me to heal myself and to make sure that I don't pass that on to my children, right? So the work that we do, men's groups, dads groups, is just so powerful. There's so many benefits that a lot of times we cannot put into paper, right? When you're writing like a what is your group you're gonna get? It's like there's so much that you cannot put into paper, like that men or dads have to just experience it for themselves, right? And see what comes about.
Well said, man. Well said. I think we're going to keep it there. That is a great way to cap it off.
Yeah, man.
Wow, time absolutely flies. I'm going to finish off this interview here with 2 more questions. All right.
Sounds
so
good.
I want you to just take a moment, close your eyes, and I want you to go 20 years into the future. 20 years from now, both your daughters are grown up. They're pretty much independent. They might call you every once in a while for some help, but pretty much independent. And your daughters are having a deep, meaningful conversation with someone, one of their really good friends. And their really good friend asks them, how would you describe your father in 3 words? How would you describe your father in 3 words? What is your desire? What is your wish? What do you hope those 3 words will be?
Yeah, one of the words that just comes to mind is present. That's huge, you know, like present, just being there, physically, emotionally, mentally present. The other one is understanding, or you know, being able to be a good listener, basically. And be able to understand what they're going through and not be so much in my head. And then the last one is fun, man. I want it to be fun. You know, I want my daughters to remember me having a good time, being happy, being dancing, being adventurous. So like fun, like I think that would be my 3 words. You know, understanding, fun, and present.
Those are 3 really, really good ones, man. And definitely a good foundation for a legacy to leave for them, which you're already doing in such a beautiful way. Next question I have for you is, if there is a young father that is sitting across the table from you, young man of color, just, you know, going through the difficulties of fatherhood, what's a message that you want to share with him?
The message that I want to share with him is that he is a good father. He already is a good father, because I feel like a lot of us, well, I did this myself too, you know, starting fatherhood is like, am I a good father? Am I going to be a good father? Man, you are a good father already, you know, no matter what. If you're trying, you're a good father. Can you be better? Of course, we can all be better. You know, can we work on some stuff? Yes, but we're starting from a good place. Fatherhood is a journey, is not a destination. We're going to be learning all across the way. And lastly, surround yourself with other men that can guide you through that, you know, that you look up to. So yeah, that would be my advice.
That's a really good message. That'll definitely put the wind in any father's sails. You are already a good father. I know a lot of men need to hear that.
Yes.
Awesome, Efrain. Well, last but not least, tell the listeners where they can find you, how they can work with you, any programs that you got going on, any way you want to big yourself up over here.
Yeah, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody that's listening. If you want to connect with me, the easiest way right now is Instagram. You can go to Latino Dad _connection. Go ahead and DM me there. I'll answer back. If you go to my link tree through there, you can also join my Facebook group if you're more of a Facebook person. I am offering monthly, what I call it is compadres connection calls. So where dads can come in and just talk about whatever they're going through. I will have some type of topic for that day and guide you through some activities. But the next one is going to be March 3rd at 6:30. So March 3rd, 6:30 Pacific Standard Time. You can sign up through my Instagram. I'll send you the Zoom link and we'll connect through there. But yeah, I offer mostly group coaching, which is men's groups, which I will be starting my next one in the end of March. And I also offer individual coaching. So if you feel that we can connect, we can work together, there's also a link through my Instagram to book a call with me, and we'll see how we can work together. So that's it for me, man. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you giving me this space.
Efrain, I appreciate you, the work you are doing for the Latino community and for fathers out there. We need more men like you in this world. I'm looking forward to many more conversations and a relationship that ends up in helping a lot of families out there. So I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much for making time for this today, and we'll talk again in the future.
All right, brother. Thank you so much.